Imagine you are in a relationship where the words I love you seem increasingly empty. Have you ever felt like that, where everything seems perfect on the outside, but inside something doesn't fit? Maybe you've asked yourself, is it me? Am I imagining things? It's as if the words are spoken, but the true feeling is absent. It seems confusing, doesn't it? But what if I told you there's a reason for this? A hidden truth that could change everything you believed about love and trust. In this video, you will discover what lies behind those empty words and how this discovery can transform your life. Stay until the end, because what you'll learn here might be the key to understanding the truth you always knew but never wanted to admit.
The soft, golden light of the club enveloped the audience in an intimate and cozy atmosphere. The exposed brick walls and the old wooden bar created the perfect setting for Charles' performance. He was on stage, guitar in hand, his agile fingers gliding over the strings as the melody spread through the air, wrapping everyone with its deep and emotional lyrics. The sound of his voice, smooth and powerful, echoed through the room, resonating in the hearts of those present. His music spoke of love, pain, and dreams, and each note seemed to pulse with the intensity of his emotions. At the back of the club, Chloe sat at a table, her eyes fixed on Charles, but her expression was distant. The sparkle that used to light up her eyes had disappeared, and an air of concern hovered over her. The song's words seemed to pierce her soul, but instead of getting lost in the beauty of the performance, she struggled with thoughts that pulled her away from the present moment. The contrast between Charles's energy on stage and her apparent apathy intrigued him. After the show, as the audience applauded and called for an encore, Charles stepped off the stage with a radiant smile, but his heart was heavy. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As he approached Chloe, his smile faded as he noticed her thoughtful expression. "Hey, did you like the show?" Charles asked, trying to break the ice. "Yes, it was wonderful, as always," Chloe replied, almost automatically. "You seemed a little distracted," he said, searching her eyes. "Is everything okay?" Chloe looked away, biting her lower lip. "I'm fine, Charles, just thinking about some things." "Things?" The concern in Charles' voice was evident. "You know you can tell me, right? We're in this together." She hesitated, her expression closing off. "It's nothing, just some normal worries. You know how it is." The answer cut like a knife. Charles felt a wave of confusion and concern. "If it's not about us, then what is it? It doesn't make sense, Chloe. Are we together, or should we be?" "Please, Charles," she said, her voice low, almost pleading. "I just want you to focus on your music. That's what really matters." He frowned, trying to understand. "You can't just push me away like that. It's not fair. I'm not asking you to tell me everything, but some communication would be nice." Chloe took a deep breath, her gaze drifting into the void behind him. "I'll be okay, I promise. Just give me some time." Those words sounded like a distant echo, and Charles realized there was a chasm between them, a space he didn't know how to cross. "Right," he said, his voice lower, almost hesitant, "but know that I'll be here when you're ready." He stepped away, feeling powerless. The music that once filled him now gave way to growing unease. As he watched Chloe walk away, a shadow of doubt began to form in his mind. What was happening to her? Why was she pulling away so much? Anguish settled in his chest, and for the first time in a long time, he felt that the melody that once flowed freely was being suffocated by a grip of uncertainty. Charles took a deep breath. He needed to understand. He couldn't let this strange distance between them persist. Music, his passion, now seemed an urgent need to express not only beauty, but also the pain that was beginning to accumulate in his heart. And as the audience dispersed, he knew he had to find a way to discover the truth behind Chloe's silence. Charles couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Chloe's distant look during his show echoed in his mind, like a tragic melody repeated endlessly. He knew he couldn't put this unease aside. As soon as he got home, he decided he needed to investigate. Chloe's phone was on the table, and although his instinct told him invading her privacy was wrong, curiosity and pain pushed him forward. With trembling hands, Charles picked up the phone and unlocked the screen. The first thing he noticed was a series of unanswered messages. Some were from friends, but others were from an unknown number. His heart raced. He began reading the messages, each word feeling like a blow to his stomach. Phrases like, "I miss you," and "Can we meet again?" jumped off the screen, and Charles couldn't avoid a wave of anger and despair. "What's happening, Chloe?" he murmured to himself as the anguish grew. On impulse, he decided to look further. He scrolled until he found a call log and saw that the unknown number belonged to an ex-boyfriend of Chloe, someone she had mentioned briefly in a conversation, but never with much emphasis. Charles's mind spun in a whirlwind. He remembered how she talked about the past, as if wanting to distance herself from it. Now, it seemed there was more than just memories. The ex was present, not only in Chloe's memories. He needed to confront her, but the idea made him nervous. What do you say to someone you love, but who seems to be drifting away from you? That night, he couldn't sleep. The music that normally comforted him had turned into an echo of his insecurities. He got up, grabbed his guitar, and began playing a melancholic melody. The music was a reflection of his broken heart, a mix of love, doubt, and pain. He didn't know if he should compose something new, or if the melody he was creating was just a lament for his relationship. The next morning, the coffee was bitter. Charles needed answers. When Chloe entered the kitchen, he felt the weight of the situation. She seemed more radiant than ever, and that only added to his frustration. He took a deep breath. "Chloe, we need to talk," he said, his voice trembling slightly. She stopped, her eyes widening, and for a moment her smile faltered. "About what, love?" "About you and your ex-boyfriend. I saw the messages." The words came out as if they were blades cutting the air between them. Chloe frowned, her demeanor changing. "Charles, you can't be serious, you're being paranoid." "Paranoid?" he exclaimed, feeling anger boil over. "I'm not being paranoid. The messages are there, Chloe. What do you want me to think?" "They mean nothing. They're just memories of the past. I'm with you now." Her defensiveness made his heart ache. "But it doesn't feel like you're really here," Charles replied, frustration spilling into his voice. "You meet with him, and it hurts me." Chloe crossed her arms, the barrier between them solidifying. "You don't understand. He was part of my life, but I chose you. Stop making a mountain out of a molehill." "A mountain?" Charles asked, his voice low and heavy with pain. "This isn't a mountain. This is me trying to understand what you're hiding from me." "I'm not hiding anything, Charles," she shouted, emotion bursting forth. "You just don't trust me." The silence that followed was deafening. The words were spoken, and the truth of what they were facing hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Charles felt that, with each passing second, the distance between them widened, and he didn't know how to bridge that gap. He wanted to scream, he wanted to cry, but above all, he wanted Chloe to look at him and say it was all okay. "I just want to know the truth," he finally said, his voice almost a whisper. "I just want you to be honest with me." Chloe's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she looked away, leaving Charles to wonder if there was a chance they could find their way back to each other. Charles sat at the table of a cozy cafe in downtown Denver, the strong aroma of fresh coffee filling the air around him. The soft afternoon light filtered through the windows, creating a welcoming atmosphere, but his mind was far from the serenity of the place. He turned the cup between his fingers, his mind caught in the confusion that was his relationship with Chloe. The truth he sought seemed more distant than ever. His friends, Lucas and Mariana, sat in front of him. Lucas, with his messy hair and carefree smile, tried to lighten the mood. "Man, you need to relax a bit. What's going on with you and Chloe? It looks like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." Mariana, always attentive, looked into Charles's eyes with concern. "You know, Charles, sometimes you need to listen to your gut. If something's bothering you, maybe it's time to face it head on." Charles sighed, remembering the messages he found on Chloe's phone. "I don't know, man. I found some messages of hers. She meets a lot with the ex-boyfriend. I keep wondering if she's still somehow stuck with him." Lucas shook his head, understanding the gravity of the situation. "If you feel like she's hiding something, you need to talk to her. You can't let this anguish consume you." "Easy for you to say," Charles replied, frustration evident in his voice. "I've tried. Every time I bring it up, she shuts down even more, calls me paranoid, like I'm the problem." Mariana placed a hand on his, a firm look in her eyes. "You're not the problem. If Chloe's pulling away, it's about her, not you, and you have the right to know the truth." The silence that followed was heavy. Charles looked out the window, watching people rush by, each with their own stories and secrets. He wanted to be sure he and Chloe were on the same page, but with each passing day, the uncertainty deepened. Meanwhile, across town, Chloe was in a bar with a group of friends, laughing and talking. But behind the smile, there was a tension that followed her. The group, which included her ex-boyfriend, seemed to have a purpose she couldn't identify. "You should have more fun, Chloe. Leave the past behind," said one of the friends as she forced a smile. "Yeah, I know," Chloe replied, but her mind was far away. The messages Charles found made her uneasy. What was she doing with her life? Instead of dealing with her problems, she allowed herself to be carried away by superficial conversations and forced laughter. The ex-boyfriend, with his seductive charm, enveloped her in a world that pulled her away from Charles. Back at the cafe, Charles felt a wave of creativity wash over him. He began jotting down some notes in his notebook. "You know, I'm thinking of composing a new song," he said, his voice full of emotion. "I need to get all this out somehow." "That's great, Charles," exclaimed Lucas. "Music is a powerful way to express what we feel. Use that pain and turn it into art." Mariana smiled, excited. "Yes, and who knows, it might even help you understand better what's going on with Chloe." But the truth was, even as he wrote, Charles felt the shadow of his uncertainty hovering over him. The music, which should be his escape, was becoming a reflection of his pain and confusion. "You can do it, Charles. Music is your passion. Use it to find clarity," Lucas said, encouraging him. "Sometimes the answer is right in front of you." Charles nodded, but the uncertainty still dominated him. He needed to find out the truth about Chloe, but how could he do that without letting himself be consumed by the pain the situation caused him? The only thing Charles could hear was the sound of his own heart, anxious and confused, struggling to find its place amid emotional chaos. Charles was in a conflicting state of mind. The music that once flowed from his fingers like a calm river had now become a battlefield where his emotions clashed like stormy waves. He decided he needed to know more about what was really going on with Chloe. The idea of following her disturbed him, but the pain of uncertainty and betrayal pushed him toward this decision. So, on a cold autumn night, he put on a dark coat and left the house, determined to find out the truth. As he walked the streets, his heart racing as he watched Chloe from across the street, who was in a red dress, enhancing her beauty. But the way she held her purse, almost as if she were protecting herself, left him uneasy. He followed her from a distance, staying in the shadows of trees and lampposts. Chloe entered a cozy cafe. Charles hesitated for a moment, but entered the cafe, looking for a corner where he could watch her without being noticed. The table where Chloe sat had a pair of lit candles, creating an intimate atmosphere that seemed strange and unsettling to him. Then he saw it. Chloe's ex-boyfriend, Lucas, entered, and his heart nearly stopped. Lucas had a confident smile, and the way he approached Chloe made a knot form in Charles' stomach. "Hey, Chloe, you look beautiful," he said, in a tone that Charles couldn't bear to hear. The way Lucas looked at Chloe was as if she were a trophy he was sure he could reclaim. "Thanks, Lucas," Chloe replied, looking away. Charles noticed there was tension in her shoulders, as if she were forcing a smile. The conversation continued, but the words were a blur. He felt like the world around him was disappearing, and all that was left was the painful image of Chloe and Lucas together, laughing and talking. "Do you still remember that song we composed together?" Lucas asked, and the question made Charles's heart sink. "It was so special to us, wasn't it?" he continued, and Charles couldn't avoid the feeling that he was losing something that had never really been his. Chloe smiled, but Charles could see the hesitation in her eyes. "Yeah, I remember," she replied, but her voice was tinged with melancholy. That conversation, that connection that seemed so intense, was too much for Charles. He couldn't stay there, not anymore. He left the cafe, the images of Chloe and Lucas burning in his mind. When he got home, frustration and pain exploded in his chest. He picked up his guitar and began playing, the strings vibrating under his fingers as his soul poured into the music. Each chord carried his anguish and despair, and the lyrics that emerged reflected his confusion and pain. "Why didn't you tell me?" Why did you hide the truth? He sang, his voice echoing through the empty room. The next morning, sunlight poured through the window, but Charles still felt enveloped in shadow. He knew he needed to confront Chloe again. He couldn't leave things like this. Determination grew within him like a lit fire. He dressed and left, determined to discover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Chloe, we need to talk, he thought as he walked the streets, each step bringing him closer to what could be a decisive confrontation, a moment that would change everything. The music still resonated in his mind, a lament that begged for answers, for honesty, for a future that seemed increasingly uncertain. Dinner was served, but the atmosphere at Charles's small dining room table was heavy, almost palpable. The candles flickered, reflecting the tension that hung between them. He had prepared for this moment. His heart was pounding in his chest, and his mind was a whirlwind. The revelations he had obtained in recent weeks could not be ignored. He looked at Chloe, who was staring at her plate, and decided it was time to open up. Chloe, he began, his voice firm but trembling, we need to talk about what's happening between us. She looked up, seeming surprised and a little scared. What are you talking about, Charles? The defensiveness was immediate. He could sense in her body tension that she already knew the conversation wouldn't be easy. About you and your ex-boyfriend, he said, the words coming out like an arrow. I saw you together, and I'm not talking about just friendship. There was something more there. Chloe swallowed hard, her face pale. You don't understand, Charles. It's not what it seems. Then explain it to me, he demanded, feeling frustration rise. What's going on? I feel like I'm losing you more each day, and I don't know why. You've been so distant. She looked away, breathing fast. I've been struggling with many things. It's not just about him. It's about me. About you. What do you mean by that? Charles felt a mix of concern and confusion. If you're going through something, why didn't you tell me before? I'm your boyfriend, Chloe. We're in this together. Chloe sighed as if carrying the world's weight on her shoulders. I didn't want to worry you. I've been dealing with anxiety and fears about the future. I don't know how to explain it to you. I feel lost. He watched her, his heart aching as he realized her fragility. You were pulling away from me. I thought you were hiding something, that you were cheating on me. It wasn't that, she said, her voice choked. I just didn't know how to ask for help. And she hesitated, as if pondering whether she should continue. He was there for me in difficult moments, and I didn't know how to handle it. Charles felt a mixture of relief and pain. So, all this was a cry for help? You felt so alone that you turned to him? Yes, she confirmed, tears beginning to form in her eyes. But I didn't want you to know. I thought I could overcome it on my own, but I couldn't. Chloe, he said, his voice softening. You don't have to face this alone. I want to be by your side, but you need to be honest with me. We need to face this together. She nodded slowly, vulnerability in her eyes. I know. I just didn't want to hurt you. You're everything to me, Charles. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you either, he replied, reaching out and holding her hand. But we need to open up to each other. I can't keep feeling insecure and confused. That only drives us apart. Chloe took a deep breath, her eyes brimming with tears, but now there was a glimmer of hope. You're right. I promise I'll try to be more open. I really want this to work, but I need time to deal with my fears. I'll be here, Charles said, his heart beating more calmly. We'll face this together, but there's one more thing I need you to know. She looked at him, intrigued. What is it? I don't trust your ex. I think he's manipulating you somehow, and we need to be cautious about that. I don't want you to fall into his trap. I know that's true, Charles, she said, her voice more resolute now. I feel it, and that's why I need you, to keep me from falling. And in that moment, as the tension began to dissipate, both knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face it together. Their love, though shaken, was still strong enough to overcome the shadows that surrounded them. Charles looked into Chloe's eyes, feeling that, despite everything, there was a new hope emerging between them. Charles felt the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he prepared for that night's performance. The club was packed, and the audience's energy was palpable. But more than the usual excitement of playing live, there was a burning determination within him. a need to communicate something much deeper through his music. He looked to the back of the club and saw Chloe. She was there once again, but now there was something different in her expression. Her eyes, once evasive, seemed to be seeking something, as if waiting for Charles to say the truth they both needed to hear. But he knew it wasn't just that at stake. There was a manipulative ex-boyfriend he needed to unmask. The song he had composed for that night, titled Silent Voice, was his weapon. As he stepped onto the stage, the murmurs of the crowd transformed into a respectful silence. Charles held the microphone, took a deep breath, and began to play the gentle melody that turned into a powerful statement. The lyrics were direct and sincere, addressing not only the pain of the betrayal he had felt, but also Chloe's internal struggle. He sang about the fears and insecurities they both faced, about the need for honesty and the importance of breaking free from the shadows of the past. "I feel the weight of what's left unsaid," he sang, his voice echoing through the room. "But I'm here, fighting for us, against these chains that bind us." Each word seemed to resonate with the audience, but above all, it struck Chloe deeply. He saw her close her eyes as if each note was touching her soul, and that gave him the strength to continue. Mid-song, he cast a glance toward Chloe's ex-boyfriend, who was in the audience, visibly uncomfortable. The man had been getting close to Chloe over the past few months, sowing insecurities and manipulating her fears. Charles knew it was time to expose the truth to everyone, not just to Chloe but to himself. He wanted everyone to know the true nature of that man. "You can try to bring me down, but I won't fall," he sang, the music rising in intensity. "We're stronger together, and I won't let you tear us apart." The words reverberated through the room, and as the music reached its climax, Charles felt he was revealing not only Chloe's truth, but also his own strength. After the performance, the audience erupted in applause, but Charles's gaze remained fixed on Chloe. She approached, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Did you really feel all that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes, I feel it. I was lost, but now I see we need to face this together. We need to confront what's happening, Chloe," Charles replied, the sincerity in his voice easing the tension between them. "I don't want to live in the shadows anymore. I want you to know I'm here for you, no matter what." Before Chloe could respond, the ex-boyfriend began to rise, clearly uncomfortable with the attention Charles was receiving. "You don't know what you're talking about, Charles. You have no idea what she really needs," he snapped, trying to unsettle the couple. "Actually, I know more than you think," Charles asserted, his voice firm. "You're not here to help. You're here to manipulate, and I won't let you hurt Chloe anymore." The tension in the room rose, and some of Charles's friends stepped forward, ready to support the musician. "You'd better leave," one of them said to the ex-boyfriend, the threat in his voice clear. "You're not welcome here." The man hesitated, but realizing he was surrounded, he decided to back off, casting a furious glance at Charles and Chloe before disappearing into the crowd. Charles felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had taken a stand, and the truth had been exposed. Chloe looked at Charles with gratitude and love. "Thank you for defending me. I didn't know how to get out of that situation," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We're in this together, Chloe, now and always," he replied, holding her hand firmly. "Let's start a new chapter, together." As Charles and Chloe embraced, the music in the background transformed into a new melody. The pain and struggle were far from over, but now they were ready to face them together, with love and music, finally finding the voice that had always belonged to them. Now, think about how many times you felt deceived by the words of someone you love. How many times have you blindly trusted, only to realize there was something more, something that wasn't being said? It's painful, but it's also a powerful lesson. If you've been through this, or know someone who is in this situation, know that you are not alone. The great lesson here is that the truth, no matter how difficult it is to face, is what truly sets us free. So reflect. Are you living a comfortable lie, or are you ready to face reality? Share your experiences in the comments, because your story might help someone see the truth too. And don't forget to click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. In my opinion, this is one of the best stories I've ever told, the most exciting. And if you liked what you just heard, you'll undoubtedly love this other story too. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.